acrobatics. It's one of those kind of days. Oh, man. It's wonderful looking at them. Thank you, Steve. That's wonderful. Let's see, so, what? Am I not turned on? Am I?
Oh, it's my job.
Oh. Well, is it all right if we start with a little story again? Okay, good. Forget giving for just a minute. There was this guy. There's always a guy, isn't there? But there was this girl that he pestered to have a date. He liked her so well, and so he kept pestering. Finally, one day, she said, oh, just to get him off my back, I'll go out with him and everything. But during the process of the date, he declared his love for her, and he said, and will you marry me? And she said, no, I won't. And he said, is there somebody else? And she said, oh, there's got to be. Just a little higher. I thought, well, that might be too high. There you go. No, that's perfect. Perfect. Oh, the magic of... Are we still working on the joke? Got what? Oh, nothing.
That's a restaurant.
Y'all are in such a good mood today. I thought the message and song was good enough. No, we don't have any. I was going to say we could go ahead and eat, but, well, there's no food back there. There's a scripture concerning giving that, this is like Luke, the 6th chapter, the 38th verse. In fact, it really means a lot to me because it's saying something that, looking back on my life and everything, it's sort of, you fill in the blanks as you go along. Unfortunately, I waited a long time before I started filling in the blanks. I mean, it would have been nice to have filled them in sooner. But it says, give, and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. In other words, whatever measurement you give forth in generosity, that's how Spirit measures back. It's how Spirit knows how you feel. Okay, now, I've used the word magic here because, in a sense, it doesn't make sense. Do you see what I mean? In other words, how could you give away and increase and then sort of stingily withhold giving away and decrease? Now, figure that out mathematically. Somebody that's good at math here, not me, but it doesn't work, does it? But spiritually, not everything is logical when you're looking at it just strictly from the physical, is it? I mean, in other words, and that's the way so many people that I've known through my life that looked at this thing of giving. In other words, they had what they had, but giving wasn't a big issue with them. All right, now then, think about this affirmation. When we affirm that God is my source, and that source always delivers abundantly. This is really the theme that if we begin to take this seriously as the theme of our life, you see the difference that can make when we know that wherever we're giving forth, there's just so much more left. We haven't even tapped into all of the good that God has for us. We haven't started. You see? Okay. Now then, I don't believe since I have been speaking to you guys in this church. Rebecca, how long has it been? Has it been 3.5 years?
4.
4. Wow. Okay, I'm going to use a word, and you've never heard me use it, tithe. Now, I don't know why I haven't used it. It looks like it would have come up at least once. But the first thing I noticed, that this was such a generous group that it didn't really seem like that I needed to say anything about it. But the other thing is, and we've got to realize what tithing is about. Now, there's an Old Testament statement. This is Malachi. This is like 300 and some odd years before Christ now. And the statement goes like this: bring your full tithe to the temple treasure, so there will be ample provisions in my temple. Now, test me in this and see if I don't open up heaven itself to you to pour out blessings beyond your wildest dreams. Well, when we get down to it, then, tithing really isn't about helping the church. What would you say it is? Does anybody have a thought?
Practicing generosity. Just
All right.
practicing generosity, period. Whether it's
That's
money,
right.
time, whatever.
That's right. Money, time, everything. Okay. Then think about this. The blessing really is ours as opposed to the recipient, whether it's the church. And I do believe somehow or other in my consciousness, I guess it's starting out as a Southern Baptist and then a minister for quite a number of years, pastored 2 churches. So tithing just seemed like the duty that I was supposed to do. I never really thought of it back then that it was more than a duty. It's really not about a duty, is it? It's about this relationship that we have with Spirit, that understanding the very principle of abundance, which we talk about in New Thought a lot more than, say, they would talk about in other places, because the idea, it's an abundant universe, sort of always, it excites me just to stand up here and say that. It's an abundant universe. I could say that the rest of the time, and it would just feel wonderful to me. Might bore you, but it's the truth. It's the truth. And so many times that we're reluctant really to use all of the sources of good that we have. And this is what happens to us. Now, think about these things. Tithing then is a gift to the church. And what is it usually? Doesn't that represent even the word itself in some language or other means 10%, doesn't it? And then if you study way back, right in the beginning, in the book of Leviticus, it talks a lot about this, and it explains like where they didn't have money to exchange. If you had 10 sheep, you brought in 1, or if you had 10 bundles of hay, you brought in another. But it's like this is a principle that it feels like that God is teaching us. And then once again, it's saying, but the blessings will, with this concept in mind, the blessings will never end. Okay. Now, but it isn't about the blessings that we're going to receive, is it? It's sort of a principle that we put within ourselves, realizing God is our source, and that source never fails. All right. What generosity does is it attracts a type of circumstances that are appropriate to generosity. In other words, if you are a generous person, you'll be like the person that 2 gentlemen were talking about, the man that they worked for. And one of them said, isn't he the most wonderful, gracious, generous person you've ever met? And the other one said, well, he said, if I had his kind of money, I would be generous and gracious too. And the guy said to him, look, he was that way before he had any money. So when we get to thinking about what creates and what brings life to the things, not just the things we need, but the desires of our heart, when we get to thinking about all of this, this is so basic to our generosity. Now, when we have a belief the stronger that belief, the more effective it is in our life. I've reached a point now to where the things that I have experienced, the ups and downs and all that's put together, that this is one of the really things that have, of the strongest nature within me, is that it's okay, however generous I would like to be. There's not going to be any depletion. That's finally arrived. I finally arrived at that. So it became a strong belief within me that that is simply the truth. And I look back on the past, the ups and downs and everything, and Pat and I were talking about it, that we went through a little period of time that we weren't involved in a church because we had moved up to Bowie to try to settle some affairs of her parents. And so there was a period of time that we just didn't want to go back to fundamentalism, and so we just didn't go to church. And occasionally I would come into Richardson to speak, and that was it. But there was such a marked difference that when I look back on it, I realized that I was going through some real education about the difference. And so the minute we got back and into church again, moved back, involved in church again, and tithing, by the way, and giving, it changed everything. It's so remarkable. I remember that it's been about 4 years ago, but all of you know probably Chris Chanowich. He was in Grapevine. He came over to Grapevine, and he did a message about, it's a secret, but there was one other word. I can't remember the other word now. The special secret. And that was what it was all about. And it wasn't like points to his message. It was like one illustration after another. And you know how he does that. But of people who had experienced both ways, and that it was life-changing, and that their generosity in giving had changed their life. Now, when we have a belief, there's always going to be a time when something challenges what we believe. Now, this is important to know, because doubt itself, whether what you're believing in seems to be the truth or not, but doubt itself is a creative force. It creates the wrong way, but it is a creative force. Anytime that you're looking upon the belief system that you have, those things which maybe they've been working, maybe they haven't been working at the highest level, but you believe in them, and then there comes a period of doubt, well, there's always evidence. There's always evidence that you're wrong. Do you know, if you remember so many stories about Babe Ruth, the great baseball player, and that 1 out of every 3 times he got a hit, so that his batting average for a lifetime, I think, was like .333. That's about what it was, give or take a point. I mean, a digit. But anyway, if you look at it, he missed more than he hit. So you could call him the greatest misser, if you wanted to, because there was more evidence about missing, but his championship nature comes true in that he followed the evidence. And this is the thing, there can be so much evidence about everything. When you read the Bible has all of these good points. Jesus made the remark that he was here to bring good news. Well, good news, I understand what that means. But you could also read other places where it looks destructive. Life can be destructive. Well, there's evidence everywhere. You remember David Koresh? I can't remember now. I remember he's part of the close to Waco. It wasn't in Waco. It was down close to Waco. But the reason I'm making that point is I remember on CNN somebody saying the Waco wackos, you know. And it wasn't Waco. It was that guy. But he was teaching from Revelations every night. One lady said until midnight, until everybody was falling asleep, he was still teaching about all the disaster and destruction and things of that nature that he could find there. Well, that's just like life is. The Bible isn't that much different than life. There's all sorts of apparent contradictions in life, isn't there? So what we do with our belief system, and especially concerning generosity, we look at it and we say, okay, we're following this idea to be the truth. You're focusing your attention and your belief system on an idea is a creative force. In other words, to make it come true, if you're operating in that direction, in times when it seemed like that the whole idea had failed me, I still somehow or other, not that I was that smart, but somehow or other within me, I said, I know that this is the way for me to go, generosity. And sometimes it came down to where, there was very little to give from, but I still said, you know what? I know that this idea is a true idea. This is a divine idea. This is something from God. And so I took it from there, and it's incredible how that the idea that you don't give up on, that you don't doubt about, begins to bless you. It comes out somewhere or other. That's why I call it magic, because I have no explanation really of how it works, other than that we're using God as our source, and we're aware of it. Okay. Now then, not only does doubt create, but giving itself is a creative force. There's something about generosity that is, like I said in the beginning, magic. Because it can create a feeling within you, and you may, regardless of how much you seem to have, that you can put your hands on, but you can say and feel honestly from the bottom of your heart, wow, I have everything. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been to that moment when you looked about what you had and you said, man, I have everything? This in itself is a creative force that expands. And then I've met so many people that had so much more, and yet you would hear from their mouth that it wasn't enough, that it didn't feel like enough. In other words, that's another way of seeing this whole thing. This feeling that we create within us becomes so powerful that it actually changes the circumstances of life, and literally more of everything that you desire seems to show up in your life. And then it becomes such a remarkable thing that what we're doing is we're no longer excited about the stuff that shows up, but we're excited about the process that Spirit uses to connect our circumstances with the good that already is ours. It doesn't altogether make sense, does it? But we in New Thought know it to be the truth. We've tried it and tested it, and we know it to be the truth. Giving is like a partnership with God. And once again, when we think of a partnership with God, we are really never, ever talking about God out in heaven that we'll someday, after we die, meet. In other words, God remote is not really what we're talking about. But we are talking about that invisible, spiritual part of ourself, that dimension that is connected with all of the knowing of the universe. This is what happens when we begin to see that giving itself is a creative process and a creative power, a creative force, however you would like to define it, but it is definitely just that. Because we began to see ourselves differently as we began to be generous. And we're not doing it because of what we hope will come in. It just can become an integrated part of our nature. That's when it's powerful. When whatever stuff is coming in, we could just as soon see it pass on through and give it to somebody else. And the process is what becomes beautiful and powerful. But the person, and oh gosh, I've known so many of them that had so much and it didn't feel to them like enough. And you want to tell them the secret of the universe. You know, don't just spring it on people suddenly. You know, they'll be measuring you for a dunce hat. Now, but so much depends on how we feel about our life and what's happening. I try to, no matter what's happening, to say, that's perfectly all right. Most of you know that I'm remodeling a house. And one day, the inspector comes in and just says, stop all of this. You don't have this, you don't have that. This isn't right, that isn't. I said, you know, I'm thinking to myself, you know, God sent him. Do you realize how hard it is to say that? I'm a guy that, I started to work for Fox and Jacob in 1953 as a carpenter. And I've been doing some kind of construction ever since, like in that 60 some odd years. And then some squirt is telling me nothing I'm doing is right. Well, and like I said, the conclusion I came to, this is just exactly what I'm supposed to be experiencing right now. You know? With that in mind, and I pray for him too, by the way, not that he's going to be agreeable, but just to bless him. I do. I every day, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, I remember to pray. He may be the greatest teacher that I've had this week, you know, or this month, or whatever, you know, maybe this year, before he gets through with me. But
now you're going to be his.
There you go. I've tried to do everything just like I was told. So anyway, he said, you know, I can cut all of your electricity off. Well, he has the power, doesn't he? All your utilities, that's what he said. All right, now besides then things or money or whatever, the greatest gift we can give is when we turn our life over to Spirit, that divine Spirit that is within us, that's connected to all the knowing and all that there is. All the source of all of our good is connected through that, because we are one with the entire universe. But we start out with learning that there's 2 parts. There's another in probably many more dimensions. But we know that there is that physical life going on here. But so many philosophers now have decided that that's really an illusion. Some days you wake up like this morning and you have trouble getting your legs straight and it feels like it's real. It feels like the real you. But the truth of the matter is that it is an illusion, and that spiritual part of you is the real you. And so when we are giving our life away, it's not like we're handing it out, but we are giving over to that force, that spiritual within us. And that then is a gift. There's something said about that, because in the very beginning, I read a scripture. And I'm going to read another one if I can find it in all of this. Give me just 1 second, because to me this is important. Okay, this is the same Luke 6:38. It was right what I was looking at. It just didn't look right. But this is called the Message. It's from a translation called the Message. So the thing I started out reading in the beginning, this is the same thing with a little different twist, but listen to this. It says, give away your life, and you'll find life given back. But not merely given back with bonus and blessings. Giving, not getting, is the way generosity begets generosity. Now, those are thoughts that we can hold with us. But think about this. Sometimes it's just giving away our time, isn't it? But I'm going to tell you the greatest thing. And you develop an attitude that creates this ability. But we have the power to, as we walk down the street, to be giving away love. Because we are actually an expression of God's love. That's your true identity, in case you were wondering today who you were. I've had days that I was in doubt, but that's who you really are. And so as we live our life, then the true giving, then is that ability to give that which is within us. If love is not within us, if that's not what we're feeling, but we create that attitude. You see, we have the power to create the attitude to where we know as we go, and it may just be a cheery hello that we're giving to somebody, but probably that's what that somebody needs. We may be encouraging somebody, but it's just like when I meet this inspector again, oh God, please, please, don't let me say anything smart aleck. Like, what's a whippersnapper doing telling me? That would be awful, wouldn't it?
Maybe you don't call him that. To his face.
Do you understand the problem? Not my problem, but how that works. So, all really that I owe to this person and to anybody else that I meet is that inner feeling of love. That's right. Whatever momentarily I might have been offended, I'm just teasing about it today. I probably wouldn't have been teasing about it the day it happened. But today I am. Because God has already gotten me straightened out. I permitted that. But the greatest gift then we can give is just pure, pure love. And somehow, when I'm here in this place, that's exactly what I feel. And thank you for it. God bless you.